Welcome to this explainer. We are going to dive right into something absolutely fascinating today, the expanding universe of human development. Have you ever stopped to wonder how we actually grow from these totally instinct-driven, completely dependent little infants into incredibly complex, socially integrated adults? Well, we're going to decode exactly how that happens by exploring the developmental stages that shape who we are. To make sense of it all, we're going to look through a few different lenses today. Deciphering human growth, Freud's psychosexual foundations, Mahler's theories on becoming an individual, Piaget's cognitive milestones, Erikson's lifespan social challenges, and finally, the holistic human experience.
All right, part 1, Deciphering Human Growth, the Blueprint. Okay, before we get into the specific stages, let's establish a really crucial ground rule. Theories are just tools for understanding the hows and whys of human behavior. So keep in mind throughout this explainer that whether we're talking about emotional, cognitive, or social growth, these theories are just different lenses used to observe the exact same developing human. They aren't mutually exclusive at all. They just focus on different parts of the blueprint.
Moving on to part 2, Freud's psychosexual foundations, the instinctual self. We've got to start our journey by looking inward at the instinctual self, focusing on the foundational theories of Sigmund Freud. Freud really established the historical foundation of developmental stages. He proposed that our core personalities are shaped primarily in those first 5 years of life, driven heavily by unconscious forces and deep biological instincts. For Freud, the earliest manifestations of development actually arise in relation to basic bodily functions.
Now, a massive concept here is fixation. Freud argued that sex is a biological instinct that causes tension, and gratifying it brings satisfaction. But if a child experiences way too much frustration or, honestly, even too much gratification at any given stage, they can experience fixation. They essentially remain psychologically stuck in that stage, and it leaves a permanent mark on their adult personality. So, for example, a fixation in the early oral stage might manifest way later in life through habits like smoking or overeating.
Freud argued we pass through 5 distinct stages. During the oral stage, in the first 18 months, the mouth is the primary focus of activity. That's followed by the anal stage, which is all about eliminative functions in toilet training. Then comes the phallic stage, between ages 3 and 5, where early gender identity starts to consolidate. Next up is the latency period, which is kind of a dormant social period where sexual urges are repressed. And finally, with adolescence, we hit the genital stage, transitioning into reality-oriented, socialized adults.
All right, part 3, Mahler and becoming an individual, the independent self.
As a baby's world expands just a bit beyond basic biological instincts, we bring in Margaret Mahler. She focused on the separation-individuation process. Basically, separation is the child learning to function independently, while individuation is forming a truly unique identity. It kicks off with normal symbiosis, where the mother and child literally feel like one fused entity. Then the child begins hatching, turning outward to notice the rest of the world. Next is practicing, where they love using their bodies and exploring. This leads into rapprochement, and finally, object constancy, where the child can hold a stable internal image of mom even when she's not in the room.
And that brings us to that tricky subphase I just mentioned, rapprochement. This happens roughly between 16 and 24 months, and it perfectly explains why toddlers are so incredibly dramatic. At this stage, the toddler suddenly realizes they are separate from their mother, so they'll aggressively run off to explore their independence, but then constantly circle back, acting like a little tail, clinging to their caregiver's leg just to make sure they're still watching. It is this profound push and pull between total autonomy and wanting safety. Part 4, Piaget's cognitive milestones, the thinking self.
Now let's completely shift our lens from emotional attachments to logic. Jean Piaget noticed that children made really consistent types of mistakes at certain ages, which led him to a huge realization. Kids aren't just less knowledgeable than adults, they literally think differently. He mapped out 4 distinct stages of intelligence. He believed a child acts like a little scientist, deciphering the physical world. Their thinking changes in quality, not just quantity, as they actively build a mental model of their environment. So in Piaget's first phase, the sensory motor stage from birth to age 2, babies learn primarily through tasting, touching, and just moving around. But the ultimate goal of this stage is mastering object permanence. See, at the beginning of life, if a baby can't see an object, it simply ceases to exist for them. But around 8 months, they realize that objects, or people, actually continue to exist even when out of sight. They finally figure out that mom hasn't vanished forever into the ether just because she's playing peekaboo. Now, while Piaget saw the child as a sort of lone scientist making discoveries independently, it's absolutely fascinating to contrast this with theorists like Lev Vygotsky. Vygotsky argued that cognitive development isn't just an independent biological clock ticking away in our heads, it's fundamentally dependent on our social and cultural interactions, our language, and learning by working with others. It's a fantastic reminder of how using multiple lenses gives us the full picture.
Get this, here is a truly surprising fact about Piaget's stages. Piaget thought that everyone sequentially reaches the fourth and final stage, formal operational thinking. That's the ability to grasp abstract concepts and hypotheticals. But research actually pushed back on this. A 1979 study by Keating reported that up to 60% of college students fail at these advanced logical tasks. No way, right? It turns out reaching that pinnacle of abstract scientific reasoning is not quite as guaranteed as Piaget originally theorized. Okay, part 5. Erikson's lifespan social challenges, the social self.
Let's zoom way out to encompass the entire lifespan. Erikson's brilliant psychosocial theory argues that human development doesn't just mysteriously stop at puberty. Instead, we face 8 distinct social crises from infancy all the way to old age. Under age 1, we face trust versus mistrust to build hope. Fast forward to adolescence, we navigate identity versus role confusion to find fidelity. As young adults, it's intimacy versus isolation to find love. Right up to age 65 and above, where reflecting on our lives brings a crisis of ego integrity versus despair, which ultimately builds wisdom.
You really have to think of these 8 stages like a giant stack of building blocks. How you successfully reconcile these forces carries over directly into your future. I mean, how a toddler learns autonomy directly impacts how that exact same person is going to navigate romantic intimacy in their 30s, or how they'll reflect on their life's legacy in their 70s. This is exactly why understanding these developmental stages matters so much to us today.
Finally, part 6, the holistic human experience, the big picture. We've looked through all 4 lenses now, and comparing these approaches really shows us the incredible evolution of developmental psychology itself. We started with Freud's fairly rigid focus, arguing that our core personality is cemented by biological drives in those first 5 years. But as the field expanded, we reached Erikson's much more dynamic, optimistic view that our personality is evolving continuously across our entire lifespan through our relationships and social conflicts.
Ultimately, what we learned from compiling all these sources is that our growth isn't just biological, and it isn't just social. It's a beautifully complex web. Our instinctual drives build our baseline personality. Dramatic emotional separations from our caregivers establish our individual identity. Cognitive leaps turn us from sensory explorers into abstract, logical reasoners. And lifelong psychosocial crises build our core character virtues like hope, love, and wisdom.
As we wrap up this explainer, looking back at the brilliant lenses of Freud, Mahler, Piaget, and Erikson, I want to leave you with one final thought about your own developmental journey. Are we defined by the stages we successfully pass through, or by the ones we get stuck in? Think about that the next time you're observing the little scientists and growing adults in your own life. Thanks for exploring the expanding universe of human development with me today.